Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Phillies Daily on the Fan Arch Podcast Network. I am your host, Chris Moore. Make sure you hit that subscribe button wherever you may be watching or listening, and however you may be doing so. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Help us continue to grow. The Phillies win streak ends at 9. They do not make it to double digits. Zach Wheeler puts together probably his worst outing of this rough stretch that he's been on. Just 4 innings. That gives up 8 runs, including back-to-back home runs in the 5th inning, 4 home runs overall. Cal Raleigh looks like his MVP self last night. Hits 3 home runs against the Phillies, and so the Mariners get the win 9-2 very easily, and the Phillies' 9-game win streak comes to an end here in the opener of this 9-game West Coast trip. They got 2 more against Seattle, 3 against the Angels, and then 3 against the Diamondbacks. The one bit of good news yesterday, both the Padres and Diamondbacks, who were the 2 teams chasing the Phillies in the NL wildcard, lost. The Braves were off, so the Phillies just lose a half game to the Braves. They did lose a game to the Cubs. The Cubs are playing the Diamondbacks, so Diamondbacks lose obviously means the Cubs win, and so the difference there is 3 games. A little bit of a bright spot, I felt like Alex McFarland and Jose Alvarado both come in. Granted, game was pretty well over. I think it was 8-2 by the time both of them were pitching, but they both threw up scoreless innings. But regardless, an ugly outing from Zach Wheeler. Obviously, that's the biggest thing that you take away from it. And you're not going to be too critical of anybody else, really, because the game was over after the first inning. Wheeler, I believe the first 6 guys reached base, got hits. They ended up, Bryce Harper threw out Josh Naylor at second base to keep him from hitting a double after the Mariners had already scored, I think, 3 or 4 runs there in the first inning. So, otherwise it could have been worse there even in the first. So, yeah, 5 runs. They had 5 runs in their first 6 batters, I believe it was. And like I said, Naylor being thrown out at second base was the only reason it wasn't 6 in the first 6. So certainly an ugly outing from Zach Wheeler. We've talked about it. This was certainly, I feel, the worst start that he's had in this stretch, in this skid. But again, talking about a guy who, he himself hasn't gotten a win since July 12th. And, by the time his next start rolls around, we very well may be into September, from July 12th to early September, before Zach Wheeler gets another win. He'll get another opportunity in the last game against the Angels. Hopefully that can be a get-right game for Zach Wheeler. The Angels, obviously, very, very bad. One of the worst teams in the American League, one of the worst teams in all of baseball. As a matter of fact, I believe them and the Athletics are fighting for who's going to be the worst team in all of baseball. So hopefully Wheeler gets an opportunity in that next start to kind of try and pick things up, because obviously the Phillies need him, and so we'll just roll right into it. Is this a long-term issue? Obviously right now it's an issue. You don't have the faith in Zach Wheeler that you had previously. I've continued to say that they need to skip a start. And I think they see it. I mean, I think that they know, obviously he struggled. It hasn't been good. You're going to give him the opportunity against the Angels. I think that's the right thing to do. Let him start against the Angels. Like, that's not the start to skip. Let him throw against the Angels and try and, put together a 5-6 innings, 2-3 run, put something solid together. Some kind of quality start gives your team a chance to win. I would skip a start again in a Braves or a Mets series that's upcoming in the month of September. Depending on how the calendar falls. Again, I think part of this, too, is Nestor Cortez isn't eligible to be called up to the big leagues yet. I think when that happens, he will be on the big league roster, and I think they may use him in some spots to try and skip a Zach Wheeler start first and foremost, but potentially a Christopher Sanchez start, maybe even a Jesus Luzardo start as well. Try and get all those guys, a little extra rest, an extra breather somewhere here in the month of September. And I don't think it's really going to matter how Cortez throws in those starts. I think that, if that's what happens, and I believe it should be, certainly what I would do. I'm curious what you guys think. Would you just plug Cortez in somewhere to push everybody back a day and just give him an extra day? Like I said, to me, I would go, I'd have to look and it would depend when Cortez is eligible. But, I'd look at, you're going to pitch for Christopher Sanchez this time through the rotation. Next time through the rotation, you're going to pitch for Wheeler. Next time through the rotation, you're going to pitch for Luzardo. So Cortez is always going to kind of be pushed back a day or so. But again, you have to do it in the right order, depending on when Cortez is eligible to come back. But to me, like each of those guys deserves a skip start through the rotation to get an opportunity to kind of take an extra breath. Um, and hopefully that helps them get them back to where they were in May and June. Because I think in May and June it was unquestionably they were the best 1, 2, 3 in baseball. And right now, uh, you could argue they're not even the best 1, 2, 3 on the team with the way that Aaron Nola and Andrew Painter have thrown the baseball here for the last month or so, and especially in the case of Zach Wheeler. And so that's where this question comes in is if you do get to the point Cortez can come up, he can give you he's got enough length, he can give you 5, 6 innings, and so you want to skip a start for each of these guys. And so let's say you skip a Zach Wheeler start and it doesn't work, he still struggles. His struggles in his next start against the Angels. Like when does this really start to become a concern? It's not for me right now. I'm not saying it is, right? It's August 25th. This is a guy who went on a long, long stretch of pitching good baseball. He talked after the game yesterday how it's been a long, long time since he's, felt this poorly on the mound, struggling with his command. He said his fastball is really the only pitch that he can rely on to throw a strike. And in the big leagues, you can't rely on just one pitch. You got to at least have a secondary pitch, that can keep hitters off balance, keep them looking for something else. And he doesn't have that right now. So I'm just curious, like, when do you and myself, when do we start to look and say, all right, this is a legitimate problem? Like I said, right now, I don't think it's a legitimate problem. Right now, I think that your 1, 2, 3 in the rotation is some order of Sanchez, Wheeler, Luzardo come playoff time. I'm not pushing the panic button yet, but I am curious where you guys are at. I mean, are we setting up? Is our hand over the button? Are we, do we have pressure on the button? Or are we relaxed in our chair? I would say after last night, I kind of sat up. Like, okay, this is a real slump. This isn't just a weird time of the season, dog days kind of thing. I mean, this is legitimate since the All-Star break. He's really not to put together one good outing. At least not a true Zach Wheeler outing. Again, has not gotten a win since July 12th. So it's certainly, again, we're going on over a month now. And like I said, for me, it's kind of, all right, we're sitting up. We are observing what's going on. We're paying a little bit closer attention to Zach Wheeler starts than maybe we were a couple of months ago. But that's probably as far as I would go right now. But I'm curious where you're at. I mean, are you fully locked in? Are we legitimately concerned? Are we trying to figure out, is Zach Wheeler's spot in the rotation for the playoffs up for grabs? Again, it's not for me. I think most Phillies fans would agree with me that that we're not at that point yet. But I think we're probably closer than we want to be. I mean, I certainly would say we are closer to legitimate concern about Zach Wheeler than we probably ever thought we would be. When you look at the way the rest of this team, offensively, the way they performed, again, you look at Andrew Painter and Aaron Nola, and you look at the bullpen, and all three of those things have really kind of, been pretty solid here as of late. And so I guess you'd take it, right? Like Zach Wheeler and Christopher Sanchez being a little bit off right now is your main concern. Well, that's better than where we were at, before the trade deadline when we were worried about the bullpen and the offense, and Aaron Nola and Andrew Painter. I mean, we had a lot of things to be concerned about, and some of those, at least for the time being, have kind of, righted the ship here in August, and Wheeler and Sanchez, kind of haven't. Again, Sanchez has been solid. Sanchez has given you opportunities to win, and Zach Wheeler's not even doing that right now. So Wheeler's obviously number one on the pie chart. He's got the biggest piece of the pie on the worry chart. But I still think he's going to be okay. I think he's going to figure it out. But again, like I said, after last night, okay, it's we got to sit up. Zach Wheeler talked about he's going to dig into things today, watch a lot of film, try and figure out if he's tipping something. Or whatever the case might be, but he's gotten to a point now where he feels like it's not just shake it off and go throw the ball better in your next start. He obviously feels like something needs to be addressed and looked at as well. So, if Zach's setting up and thinking, okay, I need to take a legitimate look at this, then then I'm gonna sit up and be paying attention to what's going on as well. So again, we'll see if they don't make any changes to the rotation, add anybody in to skip a start anywhere between now and then. Wheeler's next opportunity will be, I believe it would be Sunday against the Angels this coming weekend. And I'm curious now, what does this do for Aaron Nola, right? The way the rotation works out, you've kind of got Painter backing up Christopher Sanchez, and you've got Aaron Nola backing up Zach Wheeler. Do you, or excuse me, I'm sorry, I should say, I believe it's Painter backing up Jesus Luzardo. But anyway, so with Wheeler's struggles, does Aaron Nola feel more pressure, to continue to throw the ball as well as he has? One of the things that was causing the Phillies issues in the first half of the season before Andrew Painter got sent down and was really struggling, Don Mattingly talked about we'd really like to break up Nola and Painter, right? Having those two back to back has been tough, knowing that you've got two starters struggling and pitching them in back to back games, is not ideal, right? It takes away, it's really hard to build momentum when you have two guys back to back that are struggling. So obviously, Painter's kind of righted the ship. Aaron Nola's kind of righted the ship, but the problem is the guy that Nola's backing up right now in the rotation, and Zach Wheeler, has hit the skids. And so I'm curious if Aaron Nola feels any more pressure. I mean, again, like this is a series, if this series was in May or June, we'd have went into this saying, okay, we need to win the Wheeler and Luzardo start, and we'll hope for the best in the middle game with Aaron Nola. Well, Wheeler just went out and got rocked in game one of the series. And so listen, you're not going to win every series. I understand that, but you go into it, especially with the 3-man rotation that the Phillies have and the way they have it set up, they're in a good spot to a lot more series than not have 2 out of 3 of Wheeler, Sanchez, Luzardo throw in each series, right? Again, you're looking at 2 out of the 3 in more series than not. But that puts you in a position to win more series than not. And Wheeler struggles kind of put that in jeopardy. And now you've got a little bit more pressure on Aaron Nola. And as happy as I've been with what I've seen from Nola for the past month, he's still a guy who throws a low 90s fastball. He's got a good curveball, but if the curveball's off or his location with his fastball is off, he's got the potential to get hit around. His margin for error is not that of these guys who throw 96, 97, 98 miles an hour. He just doesn't have that room for error. And so if he's a little bit off against, especially against a team with the players that the Seattle Mariners have, obviously the Mariners have not had the season that they've wanted. But when you face a lineup with Randy Arozarena and Cal Raleigh and Julio Rodriguez, if you're missing with your pitches, they can knock you around. And we found that out about Zach Wheeler. And so I just worry if Nola's a little bit off tonight and he gets shelled around, how does this team respond? And as I've mentioned, they've responded very, very well to adversity throughout the second half of this season, really throughout all season. I mean, again, they were 9-19 and fired their manager and went on a crazy win streak after that to catch the Atlanta Braves and be 2 games back by the end of July. So, this is a team that's resilient, that's fought things off. And, I talked about Andrew Painter's kind of embodied that, and Aaron Nola trying to embody that as well. And a big start from him tonight, I think, would go a long way for his confidence, knowing that, that's several in a row now, and especially this one coming off the heels of a really poor start from Zach Wheeler. A good Nola start, I think, would go a long way for him and go a long way for the club. One other, just a little housekeeping note. Allegedly, according to Don Mattingly, they'd like to see Kyle Schwarber a little bit more at first base, something we may see. I'm thinking they'll do it against left-handers, right? Like Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper are not going to come out of the lineup. They are 2 guys that you're going to pencil in. So I'm thinking maybe against lefties, they try and get, a Derek Hill or Brian De La Cruz out in right field instead of Bryce Harper. It's also tough, though, against lefties to take Alec Boehm out of the lineup. So maybe you'd give Stott a day off or Arise a day off. Like, I think they're going to try and be a little bit more creative. Obviously, they play themselves into a situation where they're more likely than not to make the playoffs. And so you don't necessarily need to have your best foot forward, best lineup out there every single day. You can afford to give guys a rest here and there, and especially, again, Arise dealing with cramps. Bohm dealing with lower leg stiffness and tightness. Bryson stopped fouling a ball off of his lower half the other day. So like, there's reason to try and give these guys a day off or two. And again, I know Derek Hill had an issue, so maybe it's more leaning toward De La Cruz out there in right field. But I wouldn't be surprised against lefties if they try and give Arise and Bohm, or excuse me, and Stott maybe a day off here and there, and get De La Cruz and get Derek Hill out there in right field and get Bryce Harper off of his feet to DH, and that puts Schwarber at first base. We'll see. But that's the only, you have to go through some gymnastics if Kyle Schwarber is going to play first base, because if DH is open, they're going to put Bryce Harper there. And so then right field opens up. And then what do you do with Alec Bohm? And so, again, I don't know that they would do it against right-handers. I guess it is possible against righties. You could take Bohm out and leave him on the bench and just put De La Cruz or Derek Hill out there in right field and say, hey, we're just going to improve the defense out there in the outfield today, and take the offensive hit that we'll take. So that's possible. But just something of note, expect to see over this last month a little bit more of Kyle Schwarber at first. Again, I think they want to get Bryce Harper off his feet as much as possible, because come playoff time, you're going to need your best lineup out there every day, and your best lineup's going to be Bryce Harper is in right field. So I think they're going to want to get him off his feet as much as possible, but obviously you still want his bat in the lineup, so that leaves him to do some DHing and Kyle Schwarber at first base, and then kind of make it up from there. So just something of note to keep an eye on if we see Schwarber at first base a little bit more over this final month. So Phillies try and get back in the win column tonight with Aaron Nola on the bump, another late one on the West Coast in Seattle. So enjoy the game tonight, everybody, if you stay up to watch it. If not, we'll talk about it all tomorrow on Phillies Daily on the Fan Arts Podcast Network. I'm your host, Chris Moore. We'll see you tomorrow.